Hello, dear students. How are you all? Hope you are doing well. Myself, Mohammad Iqbal. Today, we are going to discuss about an important chapter that is the living world. Living world. So, how to describe living world? There must be a criteria behind that. To discuss about the living world, let us discuss the criteria about the living world. There are some important properties which we will discuss about the living world. They are growth. Second is reproduction. Third is metabolism. And fourth is consciousness. This is the important criteria on the basis of which we will discuss about the living entities. What are the living entities? How they are different from the non-living entities. Before discussing this, we should know some important terminology regarding this. There are some characteristics on the basis of which we will discuss about living and non-living entities. There are characteristic properties and defining properties. What are the characteristic properties and defining properties? How are these terminologies related to the living entities? Let us discuss them. Characteristic properties are exclusively present in all living organisms. These are the exclusively present in all living organisms that are called as defining properties. Defining properties. However, if we talk about the characteristic properties are present in living organisms, but there are some exceptions as well. Suppose if I talk about the living organisms like human beings have all the characteristic properties like they can grow, they show reproduction, metabolism, and consciousness. But there are some examples like infertile couples. Infertile couples cannot reproduce. They cannot reproduce. Example is infertile couples. Infertile couples cannot reproduce. But if we talk about the other human beings which are fertile, they can reproduce. Thus, this is the example of characteristic property. This cannot be called as a defining property because defining property is exclusively present in all living organisms. That means there are no exceptions. But if we talk about the characteristic property, there is an exception: infertile couples or worker bees. Another example is worker bees. Worker bees is the other example of the characteristic property of living organisms. So, hope you understand what is the difference between characteristic property and defining property. Well, we have these properties: growth, reproduction, metabolism, and consciousness. Among them, these two, growth and reproduction, these are called as characteristic properties, well as metabolism and consciousness are called as defining properties. So let us discuss them one by one. What is growth, reproduction, metabolism, and consciousness? So, what is growth? Growth is an irreversible, permanent change in the mass, weight, and number of a living organism. What is this? Growth is an irreversible permanent change in the mass, number, and weight of a living organism. That means irreversible. What do you mean by irreversible and permanent change? That means this cannot be reversed. Suppose if I talk about myself, when I was at the age of 15, I was just 4 feet long. Then at this age, I am 5.9. But with the, after the teenage, I may not get increase in my height. This is called as permanent change and irreversible. Suppose if I want to change my height from 5 foot and 9 inch to 4 foot, it is not possible. That is why this is called as irreversible permanent change in the mass, number and weight of living organism, or we can say cell. So far as your textbook is concerned, NCERT, there is a definition about growth, that growth is increase in mass and number of cells. We know that living organisms are made up of cells. Cell go on dividing, it forms a tissue. Tissue forms an organ. Organ forms an organism. Suppose this was a cell. During reproduction, when sperm cell, it fuses with egg cell, it forms a zygote. Zygote forms an embryo. This develop into adult. From a single cell, it is from a from unicellular, it becomes to multicellular organism. It is tissue, organ, and organism. Thus, there is increase in mass and number of cells. This is about the definition of the growth. So, hope you understood this. What is growth? Growth is irreversible permanent change in the mass, weight, and number of the cells of a living organism, or